Hey guys, it's Kat out on the trail today. I know I've been away for a while and thank you for all your patience. I did come down with COVID and it's been a bit of a recovery period, but I'm back in action and I thought I would make my next video as promised. I know some of my friends and family and some folks on social media have been asking questions about my AT Thru-Hike in 2022, so here are some answers to some of those questions. Question number one, which is probably the most common question I get, it's a repeat question, is why am I hiking the Appalachian Trail next year? This has a few different answers to it. I think the first is because it's there. You know, I live on the East Coast, I've heard of it before, and it seems like a worthwhile pursuit. I'm excited to challenge myself in a really big way because it certainly will be a challenge. And I'm also, these days feeling a bit of existential dread about climate change. And while it's there now, it may not always be. I think there's some politics and some general human behavior that kind of goes into whether or not the trail will always be there, but it may not always be. So I kind of want to do it while I can. I'm also in relatively good health, which of course I'm quite fortunate and happy to be in. So relatively healthy. I know a lot of people do things like the AT, the PCT, some of the longer trails when they retire or as they approach retirement. I think I might have some other plans for my retirement. So I didn't necessarily want to wait. And I wanted to kind of get this adventure in my youth. Another reason is that it is an adventure. I love to travel and traveled around the globe and somewhat in the US, but never on my feet. So I think that that's going to be somewhat different for me, and I'm always up to try new things. So excited about something like that. And I would say the final reason is fitness. It's been a really great motivator for me personally to get into better shape. So while I'm in relatively good health, I'm not in relatively great shape, but definitely having the AT as something to look forward to in the next couple of years. As I've been planning it, I do want to be in better shape to get into it, and certainly while you're on it, traveling just on your own 2 feet gets you into pretty decent shape. So I'm excited about that. I think it's a great motivator, and I also think it will show me a different side of myself, show me a different person that I can be, and hopefully make me stick with some of those fitness goals. Another question that I get a lot, and a few different people have asked me, is when I'm going. I think I've posted a few posts about this, but I'm planning to leave on March 10th of 2022. I'm registered at AT Camp for then. So for those who are not aware, AT Camp, there's no real serious permitting that you need to adhere to or any permits that you need to get to hike the AT, but the ATC and the AMC, I think they like to kind of know when people are going to anticipate how many people are going to be on the trail at a certain time or at any given time. Has to do with trail sustainability. Probably the towns along the AT might leverage that information to do a little bit of planning on their side. So that's when I'm registered to go. Another question that kind of goes along with that is when are you coming back and how long is it going to take you? So the AT on average takes people 5 to 7 months. I have sort of done a little bit of math and thought about this a little bit. I think I'm going to strive for around a 6-month adventure, let's say, but I do have to jump off the trail at one point to go to a wedding, and I'm sure that I'm going to take some zeros as I hike the trail. So I'm not sure that it's exactly going to take me only 6 months or only 5 months or only however long. So I'm planning to ideally come back sometime in October. I think this is also partially related to what I'm going to do about my job, which I love, and telling my company that I work for what I'm going to do, asking for a leave of absence and things like that. So more to come. I'm sure that my plans will change on a day-to-day basis. But some other questions that I've gotten from family and friends are about particular sections of the trail. So a common one is, aside from the first and last day, which are obviously watershed moments in your life and in your hike, what days are you most excited about, or what sections are you most excited about? So I have a few different answers to this. I'll start with just two, and if anyone's curious about other ones, I can go into more detail, but definitely excited about hitting McAfee Knob, and realize that if anybody Googles this, it's probably immediately recognizable. It's a very famous sort of outlook or outcropping, and it has a gorgeous view. I'm really excited for it because I think it's one of the better viewpoints that I've seen, and people really seem to like it. While I'm definitely in to the AT for the hike itself, I usually have some sort of a goal to my hiking, whether that is a really great water feature like a fabulous waterfall, or whether it's a really great summit. So when you get to the top of a mountain or a hill and you find a fabulous view, I love that. So McAfee Knob is definitely on the list of things that I'm excited about. The other thing, which may or may not resonate with everybody, is actually what's called the 100-mile wilderness in Maine. It is the point of the AT where you go basically 100 miles without hitting a town or without hitting civilization. So you're pretty far out there, and there's not a lot to save you if something goes wrong. But I actually think it's gonna be a great piece of the trail. I'm excited to kind of really dig into nature at that point. And so I think that's gonna be one of my favorite sections of the trail. I think some people are freaked out by that. For people who are nervous being in nature, if you're going northbound like I am, at that point you'll have been in nature for quite some time. So I would think that people probably get a little bit more comfortable with it, but I'm excited. Even if I were to do it like today, I think that's a worthy endeavor. So yeah, McAfee Knob and the 100-mile wilderness in Maine, I can't wait. Going along with that, many people are also curious to know if there are any places where I'm particularly worried or nervous about. I mean, in some respects, I'm not gonna know until I know. I'm not gonna know a bad section until I get to it, and really, are there any bad sections of the AT? I don't know. However, I will say, from doing some research and reading a lot of books and blog posts and things like that, I am nervous about Pennsylvania, which is also referred to as Rocksylvania or Painesylvania, and apparently is just kind of like rocks. And it's a very long section of the trail. It is, yeah, you're in Pennsylvania for quite some time. And knowing myself, I do tend to get kind of frustrated if I don't have, or if I'm, not if I don't have solid footing, but if I'm constantly scrambling and there's no end to that, I think I'm gonna be a little bit frustrated in that section. So I'm trying to kind of keep that in mind and mentally prepare for it. Otherwise, you know, other than the rock situation, I don't think there's anything that I'm particularly concerned about. Maybe starting off the trail, fitness wise, and making sure that my head is in the right place. You know, a lot of people quit early on, and I don't think I'm gonna be one of those people, but yeah, just making sure that I'm really well prepared for hopefully what I'm gonna encounter on this trail, on this journey. Such a nice hike that I'm doing today. It's essentially more of a nature walk than anything else, but I came back to my hometown. There's like a little hill in my hometown that has a couple of nice trails running through it. I used to come up here in high school, and somewhat when I would come back from college and kind of hike some of these trails around this hill here. I did attempt, I successfully hiked Mount Greylock a couple weeks ago, which is the highest point in Massachusetts. But since I just was recovering from COVID, and in fact hadn't fully recovered, it was a really hard hike for me. And there was a couple times where I A, didn't think I was gonna make it, and B, I thought I might actually pass out. So I'm trying to take it a little bit easier and ease my way back into things rather than just doing my normal thing, which is jump right back into doing multiple really heavy miles per day and really tough inclines. So here I am on my little nature walk, still out of breath, of course, but just wanted to show you the super nice trail that I'm on. Some of the questions that I've got from friends and family have been logistically focused on, you know, food, shelter, towns, and things like that. So a common one is, how do you get food, and do you need to learn how to hunt? Which is certainly a good question. I will say that typically you get food by stopping in a town, and I believe I read somewhere that you hit a town on average every 4 to 6 days or so. I think there are some longer sections, and certainly the 100-mile wilderness in Maine where you don't hit a town for quite some time, but on average I believe it's like 4 to 6 days, something like that. So getting food from, you know, a grocery store or convenience store or some sort of a trailside resupply should probably be not an issue at all. On the hunting question, the answer to that is no, and that's lucky for me because I am largely a vegetarian. I do eat some meat, but I can't really foresee myself killing an animal, and so I'm very lucky in that I do not need to learn how to hunt or bring any hunting equipment with me on the trail. A connected question that I have gotten from a few male friends and male family members is, how are you going to protect yourself on the trail? Are you going to bring a gun? The answer to that is certainly not. First of all, I do know how to shoot a gun, a couple types of guns actually, but I really don't like them, and I'm not planning on doing that. I don't have a gun license, first of all. The gun laws change state to state, second of all. Third of all, I'd probably kill myself or somebody I didn't mean to before actually successfully warding off any type of untoward activity towards me. So no, I will not be bringing a gun. I plan on using common sense to keep myself from getting into any trouble. I will certainly have a knife, but that's really more for cooking and fixing things than for defending myself. I think you'll find, and you know, if anybody has researched the trail before, typically it's good people. There's not a lot of violence on the trail, especially the AT. It's very well traveled for the most part. Of course, people do die, accidents happen, sometimes violence happens, but that can happen to me walking down the road too. It can happen to me right here in my own hometown on a very, very small trail. So it can happen anytime, and that's not one of the things that I'm worried about, but it is a good question. In a similar vein, people have asked me a few times how I plan to protect myself from wildlife and how I also plan not to interfere with wildlife, which is a great question. To the first, how am I going to protect myself? They kind of go hand in hand. I will plan to bring a bear bell with me or some sort of a noisemaker so that I'm not startling animals as I'm walking around. That's kind of the most dangerous part of it, is if you catch some animal unawares and you scare it, then it's scared and it wants to attack you, which is no fun. Second part of that is certainly leave no trace. So do my best to, you know, hang my bear bag where appropriate. Don't leave trash around. Try not to impact the animals or the ecosystem in any way permanently or even really temporarily. So basically do my best to be a good trail citizen and not mess with anything on the trail. Have a super nice view. Just came out to kind of a flat spot and a tree-free zone on this trail that I'm on. Does your stove have a built-in igniter? And the answer to that is no. So I do have a stove and I'll have to use a lighter with it. The tag-along question with that was, are you scared to light your stove? And the answer to that is not at this point, but the first time I lit it was a bit of a situation. I have never used a canister stove before now, so I really wasn't used to it, and I didn't know how to properly adjust the fuel, the gas coming out of it, the isobutane mix. So I screwed the actual stove onto the gas canister, and that went fine. It was a really windy day outside, and I was like, this is perfect. I'm gonna get to test it out in the wind, see how it holds up. I don't have a windscreen for it, so I was like, need to test it at some point. And I took my lighter to it and lit the thing, and it basically was an inferno and like had a huge flame that I was definitely not prepared for. and I lit it on the steps outside of my house, and the wind like basically took this huge plume of flame and just started kind of pushing it towards the siding of my house, and which is plastic siding, of course. So I got really concerned that it was gonna burn it, and it actually did burn. There's like the valve on the stove itself had some sort of a rubber coating on part of it, and it definitely burned that. So I was essentially screaming and trying to get my sister to bring me some water to put it out, because the gauge or the control was on fire, so I couldn't do it. You know what? It was a learning experience, let's say that. And I learned from it, and I've never done that again. But yeah, so not scared anymore, because kind of, not the worst has happened, but a scary situation. Oh, this is bouncy. Scary situation already happened. So I think now I'm used to it. All right, taking a little bit of a break here to finish up some questions. I knew I was not going to remember all of them off the top of my head, so I did write some down. The first one is, are you worried that the trail in 2022 will be a little bit overcrowded because of the COVID pandemic and some people canceling their hikes? I would say a little bit, but not enough to make me not want to go in 2022. Some people did choose to continue their hikes of the AT in 2020 when the pandemic hit, even though there was some advisory that said they shouldn't. Some people chose to ignore that and did it anyway, and that's living their own life. And then also there are hikers that are hiking this year, so I hope you're all following them on their journeys as I am. So some of the class of 2021 is, they're in progress now, and so I expect that, there might not be as bad of crowding in 2022 as, we could have anticipated potentially after 2020. Another one is, are there times where you're really far from civilization? And I would say that's a relative answer. It depends on where you are and what you consider to be really far from civilization. In Maine, there are definitely some stretches that are longer and that you don't hit a town for a while. But again, if you consider one day really far from civilization, then that's going to be yes all the time. If you don't and you consider it more to be like 5-7 days out, then that's probably a little bit more limited. Another common one is, are you going with someone else? Would you expect to be walking alone for the entire time? I think that's kind of two questions. First, I think that one of my friends is going to come with me, so hopefully we're able to meet up next March and jump on the trail together and hike the AT together. So that should be fun. And then the other part of that is the AT is an extremely well-traveled trail. There are thousands of people who start it every year, so certainly would expect, even if my friend somehow doesn't make it out, or I lose him or he loses me or something, there's definitely going to be people around, whether that is other hikers or whether that is weekend warriors or just people coming out on the trail for a day. So going to be other people around. And the last question that I got from my grandpa is, are you going to cut your hair shorter? As you can see, my hair is really long, and the answer to that is no. It's actually a lot easier for me personally to take care of my hair when it's longer, so I plan on keeping it at least as long, if not longer, for the AT next year. All right, everyone. I think that's all the questions that I've got so far, and I hope the answers were helpful for you, whether it was your question or not. If you do have any more questions for me, I would absolutely be happy to do another Q&A session. Please drop some of your questions in the comments, and I'll do my best to answer them in the next video. Thanks so much.